Okay, so you want to own a gym. In your head, it probably looks something like this. You sign a lease on a big open space, you roll in some treadmills and a rack of dumbbells, and within a few weeks, you've got 300 people paying you $40 a month to basically use a room you already paid for. No inventory to restock, no perishable goods, no customers demanding refunds because their burger arrived cold. Just recurring revenue landing in your account every single month, like clockwork, while you walk the floor, high-fiving regulars, and occasionally spotting someone on the bench press. It feels like the closest thing to passive income you can build with your hands. Buy the equipment once, collect the membership fees forever. Here's what nobody shows you. The average commercial gym in the United States operates on a net margin of somewhere between 8 and 15%, and a huge share of new gyms never see a single year of positive cash flow before they close. Roughly 1 in 5 fitness facilities that open in a given year won't make it to their third anniversary. That's not a niche failure rate. That's an industry where the math quietly works against most of the people who walk in assuming it's simple. Understanding why it looks so different from the fantasy is worth your time, because the gap between the gym that survives and the one that shuts its doors usually comes down to decisions made in the first 90 days, long before the grand opening banner goes up. Let's start with what it actually costs to open the doors. If you're doing this on the cheapest end, a small strength-focused studio in a strip mall, maybe 3,000 square feet, you're realistically looking at $75,000 to $150,000 all in. That covers a modest rack of equipment, some rubber flooring, mirrors, a front desk setup, and enough build-out to pass inspection. Step up to a mid-size, full-service commercial gym in the 10 to 15,000 square foot range, the kind with a cardio deck, a free weight section, a few group fitness rooms, and locker rooms with actual showers, and your all-in cost jumps to somewhere between $500,000 and $1.2 million. Commercial fitness equipment isn't cheap. A single commercial-grade treadmill runs $8,000 to $12,000, and you need a dozen or more just for your cardio wall. Power racks run $2,000 to $4,000 each. Add in flooring, HVAC upgrades because 40 sweating bodies generate serious heat load, locker room plumbing and signage, and the equipment alone can eat a third of your budget before you've paid a cent of rent.
Speaking of rent, that's the next gut punch. Fitness space typically leases for $18 to $35 per square foot per year, depending on your market. And landlords increasingly want personal guarantees on top of the lease because they know gym buildouts are expensive to remove if you fail. On a 12,000 square foot space at $25 a square foot, you're paying $25,000 a month before you've sold a single membership. And build-out costs, the actual construction to turn a bare shell into a functioning gym, run $75 to $150 per square foot, depending on how much plumbing and electrical work is involved. That's the number most first-time owners underestimate the worst, because it's invisible until the contractor hands you the change order. Once the doors are open, you're not done writing checks to the government. Every state and most cities require a general business license, and gyms specifically need health and safety permits tied to occupancy limits, fire code compliance for exercise equipment spacing, and in many jurisdictions, separate permits if you're serving anything from a smoothie bar or offering sauna and steam facilities. A city like Los Angeles will run you through fire marshal inspections tied to maximum occupancy that directly caps how many members you can legally have in the building at once, which matters enormously for a business model built on overselling capacity. Add ADA compliance requirements for accessible equipment paths, locker room fixtures, and parking, and a first-time owner can easily burn through $15,000 to $30,000 on modifications that generate zero revenue but are non-negotiable before the city will sign off on your certificate of occupancy. On top of that, liability insurance for a facility where people intentionally injure themselves lifting heavy objects is not optional and not cheap. General liability plus professional liability for any trainers on staff typically runs $8,000 to $18,000 a year for a mid-sized gym, and that number climbs fast if you're running youth programs or anything involving contact sports.
Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the sticker price of opening the gym is honestly the easy part to plan for. The expensive part is what happens every single month after that, and this is where nobody warns you. Staffing is the first hidden weight. A front desk needs coverage basically every hour you're open, which for most commercial gyms is 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. That's not one employee. That's a rotation of 6 or 7, even at part-time hours, plus a manager, plus cleaning staff, because a gym that smells bad loses members faster than almost anything else you can screw up. Payroll for a mid-sized gym easily runs $25,000 to $40,000 a month once you include trainers. And equipment doesn't last forever under commercial use. A treadmill that might run 5 years in someone's garage gets pounded 8 hours a day, 7 days a week in a gym, and realistically needs major maintenance or replacement every 3 to 4 years. Budget 5 to 8% of your total equipment value annually just for repair and replacement, because belts snap, motors burn out, and cables fray, usually at the worst possible time, usually on a Saturday morning during peak hours. Then there's energy. Running HVAC hard enough to keep a room full of exercising bodies comfortable, plus hot water for showers, plus lighting for extended hours, puts commercial gyms among the higher energy users per square foot of any retail category. Utility bills of $3,000 to $6,000 a month for a mid-sized facility are common, and that number has climbed with electricity prices over the past 2 years. Walk into a gym at 6 in the morning in July and you'll understand the problem instantly. The air conditioning is fighting 40 bodies generating heat on a squat rack. The smell of rubber flooring and industrial disinfectant hangs in the air. And somewhere a fan belt on an aging elliptical is starting to squeal in a way the maintenance log hasn't caught yet. None of that shows up in a spreadsheet until the electric bill lands or the machine finally seizes up mid-workout with a member standing on it. Cleaning supplies alone at commercial volume runs several $100s a month. And towel service, if you offer it, adds a recurring laundry contract that scales with member count, whether those members actually use a towel that day or not.
Software is another line item first-time owners routinely miss. Member management platforms, access control systems tied to key fobs or mobile check-in, and payment processing integrations typically run anywhere from $300 to $1,500 a month, depending on your member count and how many features you're licensing. It sounds small next to a mortgage-sized loan payment, but stack it against payroll, insurance, utilities, and maintenance reserves, and you start to see why so many owners find themselves staring at a bank statement in month 4, wondering where the recurring revenue actually went. Let's take one single membership and follow the money all the way down, because this is where the picture actually comes into focus. That member pays $40 this month. Before it ever touches your operating account, the payment processor takes its cut, roughly 3% plus a small per-transaction fee. So call it $1.20 gone before you've done anything at all. Divide your monthly rent, utilities, and insurance across your active member base, and each membership is quietly absorbing somewhere around $14 just to keep the lights on and the lease current. Payroll, spread the same way across 2,000 members, eats another $9. Equipment depreciation and your maintenance reserve, spread per member per month, take roughly $4 more. Marketing spend to replace whoever cancels this month adds another $2 or $3 per remaining member. By the time you add up processing, occupancy, payroll, equipment wear, and marketing, that $40 payment has shrunk to somewhere around $7 to $9 of actual contribution margin before you've even paid down the loan on the building. $7 out of $40 per member per month. That's the real unit economics hiding underneath the smoothie bar and the motivational posters. And it's exactly why volume, retention, and low churn matter more in this business than almost anything else you could optimize.
Here's the trap almost nobody warns you about walking in. The core product you're selling, unlimited access to exercise equipment, is not actually where most of the profit comes from. If your entire business model depends on every paying member showing up and wearing down your equipment and hogging your parking lot, you'd need impossibly high prices to cover your costs. The real economics of a gym work because of something almost counterintuitive. The business is healthier when a meaningful percentage of members pay every month and rarely show up. Real estate investors call this concept phantom capacity, and gyms have built an entire industry around it. A facility with 1,000 memberships sold might comfortably fit 200 people at once because the math assumes, correctly, based on decades of industry data, that a large share of members will pay consistently while attending inconsistently or not at all. Add to that ancillary revenue, personal training packages sold in bulk up front, retail sales of shakes and supplements with retail-level margins far higher than membership dues, and increasingly monthly add-on tiers for perks like guest privileges or access to premium equipment areas. This is your foundation and your safety net. If you've made it this far, you're already seeing the industry more clearly than most people who walk into a gym lease with a dream and a credit line. So go ahead and hit subscribe now, because we're about to get into the numbers that actually decide whether this business survives its first bad year. Let's put a real face on this with a case study, because the clearest proof of how this business actually works isn't a spreadsheet, it's Planet Fitness. When Planet Fitness scales nationally, it deliberately priced memberships at $10 a month, a number that looked almost irrationally low compared to traditional gyms charging $50 or $60. Critics assumed the company was destined to bleed cash. Instead, Planet Fitness became one of the most profitable fitness franchises in the country, and company leadership has been refreshingly candid in public interviews and investor calls about exactly why. The $10 tier is built around low utilization. The company's own executives have openly acknowledged that the business model depends on a large share of members paying consistently while rarely visiting, and that a smaller premium tier, the Black Card membership at roughly $25 a month, adds perks like guest privileges and access to massage chairs that boost margin further.
Franchisees also benefit from a real estate strategy of taking over large, cheap-to-lease vacant retail boxes, the kind left behind by failed big box stores, which keeps their per-square-foot occupancy costs well below boutique studios competing for prime retail frontage. It's a masterclass in building a fitness brand where the workout floor is almost secondary to the underlying real estate and payment processing math running quietly underneath it.
Which brings us to the second thing almost nobody tells you before they sign a gym lease. The people who consistently make the most money in the fitness industry are rarely the individual gym owners grinding their member retention every month. They're the equipment financing and leasing companies collecting fixed payments on treadmills and racks regardless of how full the gym gets. They're the payment processors taking a cut of every single electronic funds transfer on every membership month after month across an entire portfolio of clubs with essentially zero operational risk. And they're the franchisors collecting royalty fees and territory fees off gross revenue, whether a given location is thriving or barely breaking even. Ownership concentrates all the operational risk, the empty Tuesday mornings, the broken treadmill motor, the member who calls corporate to complain, onto one person's balance sheet. Financing, processing, and franchising spread that same risk across thousands of locations, which is exactly why those businesses tend to survive downturns that individual gym owners don't. So let's run the actual numbers, because this is where the fantasy and the reality finally collide. Say you open a 12,000 square foot commercial gym. You put down $800,000 all in, financing 60% of it at current commercial lending rates, which for a small business term loan in this environment sits around 8 to 9%. That puts your annual loan payment around $75,000. You sign up 2,000 members at an average of $40 a month, which is a strong, realistic number for a well-located, well-marketed gym in its second year. That's $960,000 a year in membership revenue before a single personal training session or protein shake gets sold. Here's the optimistic scenario. Payroll at $30,000 a month runs $360,000 a year. Rent on that space at $25 a square foot comes to $300,000 a year. Utilities land around $50,000. Equipment maintenance and gradual replacement, insurance, software for member management and access control, and marketing to keep new signups replacing the members who cancel, together run roughly $150,000 for the year. Add your $75,000 loan payment, and your total costs land close to $935,000. Against $960,000 in membership revenue, plus say $60,000 from personal training and retail, you're looking at a net profit in the range of $80,000 to $90,000 for the year. Thin, but real, and against the freedom of running your own business and the pride of building something in your community, plenty of owners genuinely consider that worth it.
Here's the realistic scenario. Running the exact same gym through a rougher year. Member churn ticks up because a new boutique studio opens 2 miles away offering trendy small group classes. And instead of 2,000 steady members, you're constantly fighting to replace 3 to 5% who cancel every single month just to stay flat. Your marketing spend to backfill those cancellations climbs from $30,000 a year to $70,000. Meanwhile, 2 treadmills and a cable machine fail within the same quarter, an unplanned $12,000 repair bill that wasn't sitting in a reserve fund because nobody budgeted for equipment failure clustering like that. Energy prices spike over the summer, pushing your utility bill up by 20%. And your loan payment, your insurance premium, and your lease payment don't care about any of that. They arrive exactly on schedule every month, rain or shine, gym half full or nearly empty. Run that same location through this version of the year, and your net profit doesn't land near $85,000. It slides to something closer to break even or slightly negative on a gym that sold almost the identical number of memberships as the good year. The gap between a good year and a bad year in this business isn't measured in some catastrophic single event. It's measured in a few points of churn, 1 clustered equipment failure, and a summer utility spike, compounding quietly across 12 months.
So what actually separates the gym owners who make this work from the ones who get burned? It rarely comes down to how much capital they started with. The ones who make it treat member retention as a daily discipline rather than an afterthought, tracking who hasn't shown up in 3 weeks and reaching out before that person becomes a cancellation instead of after. They negotiate their equipment maintenance contracts and build a repair reserve before opening day, instead of treating the first broken treadmill as a crisis. They understand from day one that the workout floor is only part of the business, and that personal training, retail, and smart real estate decisions are what actually protect the margin when membership growth slows. And they measure success against a realistic 5-year cash flow model, instead of the fantasy of a packed parking lot on opening weekend. The owners who get burned tend to make the same handful of mistakes. They overbuild on day one, chasing an image instead of matching capacity to a realistic membership base. They underprice against competitors without understanding their own cost structure, and they treat marketing as a launch expense instead of the ongoing cost of doing business that it actually is. A gym is not a shortcut around the cost structure of the fitness industry. It's that entire cost structure. The equipment financing, the real estate risk, the churn management, the seasonal energy swings, compressed into a single lease with your name on it and your signature on the loan. And that, more than any spreadsheet, is the pattern worth carrying into whatever business you're actually considering. Almost every industry that looks like passive income from the outside is really just somebody's full-time job wearing a disguise. And the people who profit consistently are usually the ones one layer removed from the daily grind, collecting fixed fees while someone else absorbs the variance. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what's actually happening behind the smoothie bar and the motivational posters, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because next week we're pulling apart another business that looks nothing like what the brochure promises.